welcome to the Weightlifting.ai Podcast. I am Max Ada, your host, and guess who's with me? Giggling Gibson, right here. Joshua Gibson, everyone, your sports scientist. Today, we have a pretty interesting episode. Josh is going to add an enormous amount of complexity to your complexes. Josh, are you ready?
I was born ready.
You're born ready. Typical answer. That's what I expected. So today, big topic. We're going to talk about complexes. We're going to talk about a few things, some considerations as to how to build a complex, why you should do complexes, where you should put them, and a little bit of detail as to how you actually do it in the app, because we have a custom complex builder built into the app, and then maybe some other complex information that would work for remote coaching, or if you're in a gym coaching people or doing stuff on your own, and maybe you're just foolish enough to not be doing the Weightlifting.ai app. So, with that being said, where do we start?
The initial question is always, what is a complex?
There it is. What is a complex? Complex, I think, would be defined as the stringing together of different exercises, right? That may or may not target what you're looking to target as far as like doing things that are all, related to the same movement. But it's different exercises. So, for example, a complex would be like snatch pull plus a power snatch plus a hang snatch above the knee. Three different distinct exercises that are all going to be sequenced together. So you do the pull, then you do the snatch, the power snatch, then you do the hang snatch. That's a complex. Okay, that would be like, you might do 2 pulls plus 2 snatches, powers plus 1 hang snatch. Or it could be 1, 1, 1, or any number of different repetitions per exercise. That's how I would define a complex. Do you object to that?
No, I'd say it's the exact definition I was going to use. Is like 2 or more dissimilar exercises with 2 or more reps. So you would get 2 or more dissimilar exercises, meaning different, and then you would get 2 or more reps, meaning 1 plus 1, or 2 plus 1, or 2 plus 2, or 1 plus 1 plus 1. And again, it's that idea of you're trying to use them in a way that's building capacity, building technique, or building consistency, or some sort of like potential success with the classic lift.
And so that's really why we do complexes, right? We're focused on trying to achieve something from that, obviously like hopefully an intelligent assembly of different exercises. The primary things we're trying to do is generally the first one is building work capacity, right? Or some kind of capacity, because we're stringing together more movements, so obviously volume is going to be higher. The second thing we're trying to achieve is some kind of technical improvement, because we're generally going to pick exercises that sequence well together. So you're not going to see someone do a complex, generally speaking, or an efficient complex is not going to be something like snatch pull plus power clean plus drop snatch, or plus push press. These are weird things. You could do that, and you'd benefit only from the perspective of increased work capacity or muscular endurance, right?
That's not to say that you're not going to get a complex that seems at face or on face weird or odd, right? So like some people might do, I've programmed this before, clean, jerk, I don't know if you call this a complex, but like clean, jerk, clean, clean. But it could be a variation, right? So it could be classic clean, jerk, hang clean above the knee. And the reason you do that is because you're trying to keep the jerk as fresh as possible. So you're moving it up in the order, and then you're on the back end of that saying, what technical aspect of the clean do I want to work on? What aspect of capacity with the clean do I want to work on? So like just because it looks weird doesn't mean it is wrong. But just because it looks weird too doesn't mean that it's right. And it's like, oh, this is going to be great. It's so strange I have to do 2 power snatches and a power clean.
Exactly. So that's what a complex is, why we're doing them, or what the intended goal there is. And then I think the sort of big question is sort of like when do I use complexes, right? Now, obviously complexes can exist throughout the entire training cycle, even up through, the days before competition. There's no real limit on that. It's more a matter of the context of what's going on in the program, or what your goals are with the program and the complex, that are going to dictate when you use them, right? Or essentially when they appear in the program. Early in a training cycle, very beginning phases, we're probably going to see a lot more complexes, because as we know, early in the training cycle, we generally see higher variation, larger volumes.
Right.
Those kind of things are associated a lot with complexes. It's an efficient way for us to get at solving those problems or satisfying those requirements without having to do 15 doubles. Not that the app may not have given, some people may get that in the app. So 15 doubles of power snatch. Right. You might use a complex to accomplish the same amount of volume, but also target a little bit more of the spectrum of technical improvement you're looking for.
Right.
And improve capacity as well, because you can kind of ramp up the volume a little bit easier with complexes. As you progress and you move towards those strength phases of the cycle or even into peaking, complexes can become less complex, right? Sure. You drop an element and move to focus that volume more towards that specific thing you're trying to train, right? And then in peaking, we might even see that complexes stick around as one, they might be a complex that's valuable. It's useful for somebody because it targets a specific technical aspect that they struggle with. And so when they're doing a pull plus a snatch, the snatch improves just that much more, right? Yeah. It would be used, in my opinion, in that capacity, more for a technical type session where it's not going to be the absolute heaviest things we're doing, because generally we're probably going to see more of that volume be allocated to like a classic snatch.
Right.
But could definitely be something where we see some of those complexes, right? Or if we've got a large volume workout that exists in the peaking phase, we might see it as like a snatch plus a hang snatch above the knee, because we get a little bit more of that exposure. The volume can be kind of soaked up by doing it as a complex. Josh.
Yeah, and I would say like the thing that I really struggled with when I started, and I think people listening probably struggle with this as well, is they think about, I want to put a complex in. How do I write a complex? And it's like, well, I'm going to do 1 snatch and 3 overhead squats. Yeah. And it's like, well, yeah, sure. Like if
that's Josh's way of saying fuck you. Well, yeah,
sure. It's like your overhead's weak. I'm going to do more overhead squats, but you kind of lose the aspect of a complex, the positive aspect of a complex, which is you can pick exercises that really emphasize an aspect of the movement or the technique. So you could put in snatch, balance, overhead squat. You could put in some sort of other variation, or you're doing more actual snatches to get more turning over the bar and kind of like punching up.
Right.
Maybe like pause in the catch. So hang snatch plus snatch, both pause in the catch instead of like snatch plus overhead squat. And I think when I started trying to develop complexes, it was very much like, I want to do a snatch plus a snatch pull plus a snatch plus an overhead squat because it's a complex, instead of like, well, I'm doing this for a very specific reason of getting more reps of the pull with no foot movement to try and work on elevating the bar in a straight line. And then we're doing the overhead squat because, the weights need to be lighter. We're going to use a little more volume to drive a training effect. So like, you don't create a complex when you start out with, it being well-intentioned. It's more so like, I need to do something and I need to do a lot of it.
Yeah, and something to think about as far as, what I think about when I'm designing a complex, I think you talked about this, you hit on this, is that we don't want to create complexes, well, that's not true, complexes that have exercises that have lower, let's say that complexes with more dissimilar elements.
Right.
They're not ineffective, they're not necessarily not useful, but their utility decreases.
Right.
Because what you end up with is a training session that has a lot of volume, and it does a decent job, an adequate job of taxing your ability to do reps, to do training, but it doesn't necessarily also develop the technical elements of the lift, right? Because if you're doing a snatch pull plus a power snatch plus a snatch push press plus a hang snatch, it's like you're doing a lot of different things that aren't necessarily all targeting that similar kind of grouping of like, we want to work on the explosion, or we want to work on your overhead strength. And so you just become, it becomes like a cloud of work that's not as directed as it could be.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean it's not useful, but it's like, what is it really accomplishing in the end if it's just a lot of reps? The best example of this, I would say, is like in CrossFit, remember the bear complex? And it was like a workout, like 7 different elements. It's like front squats and back squats and presses presses. And so you end up in a situation where it's like, yeah, that's hard. It's a lot of work. And maybe like really early in a training cycle, you could do something like that as a way to like, I'm in terrible shape. I need to like build up.
Move, right? Maybe because cardiovascular adaptations are general in nature. Right. Because you're looking at the heart, which is just pumping blood. So it's like the more it has to pump, the harder it has to pump, the more volume of blood it actually pulls in, the more effective the adaptation, or the stronger the adaptation.
So,
And I was going to say, to your point, James Hoffman of RP has a video, and it's probably in like the RP educational library, but he talks about directed adaptation with programming and concentrating your resources towards a singular or like a few different adaptations instead of trying to do everything all at once and getting this blender effect.
Yes.
So I would call that a smoothie complex. Where it's like strawberries, pineapple, peanut butter, star anise, maybe cat foot or something.
Like a cat's foot?
Do you remember when they were rabbit's feet? They were on like keychains.
Oh wow!
I guess it wasn't a cat, but
I can already the picture. Josh has painted a picture of his adolescence for me that is just so weird.
And that's why I am the way that I am. But no, you would have a smoothie complex where like none of it makes sense, and you're actually not training anything but kind of like work capacity, which is great. But the point about work capacity being like this kind of like flexible adaptation is you can do it in a way that's a little more simple, a little easier to tolerate, and a little more directed too. Yeah, it's really limited too. Yeah. It's like, I mean, we can do this if our only goal is to develop, some capacity. That's great, but it's also like you're just limited, right? You're not going to get as much out of it as, like you're doing all these reps. Why don't you concentrate them for directed adaptations? Right. So then the final kind of component here to think about when you're actually constructing the complex, like number of reps per element, number of elements, and then what elements you string together, right? I think those are the specifics that are important. And some general guidelines, I would say, and I'd like to hear your opinion on this though, is if you're going to do a complex that involves elements that potentially have a very limiting effect on the weight you can use, be aware of what's going to happen in that. So if you say building a complex that's like a press plus a push press plus a jerk, what you've done there is, there's 3 elements that all are effectively training towards some kind of directed adaptation for the jerk. But the limiting factor is the press. And unless you have a very, very strong press, that jerk weight at the end is going to be very low, right? So you end up in a position where it's like, if you're going to do 4 reps there and you do 2 presses, 1 push press, 1 jerk, the push press and the jerk are going to be really light. Right. And so the training effect you get from that is probably going to be pretty diminished, right? Whereas you might look at it as like, well, okay, I'm going to do a press, a push press, and a jerk. One, is that a good complex? There's probably potentially better options, maybe just push presses and presses, or just push presses and jerks, or just press and push press, because they're a little bit similar in intensity. You can get more out of it. And then you might allocate more of that volume to the exercise that's heavier, because you're already going to do, it's already lower intensity, so you should probably ramp that up more. So for example, you might have, if you're going to do a press, a push press, and a jerk, you might have, 1 press or 2 presses, 2 push presses and then 2 or 3 jerks at the end of it, right? In order to sort of balance out the amount of work that's going in. If the goal is technical in nature, that's not as important. If you're doing a press before a jerk as a technical device to try and increase, put more constraint on the trajectory of the barbell and maybe improve that, which would be kind of a question mark if that can happen, but you're giving yourself a little bit more of a leeway there to say, okay, this is so much more technical in nature. I want to do these things before I do the primary thing, so they have some transference. We see that a lot with pulls, right? Snatch, pull plus snatch. The snatch pull is not going to be hard, right? It's not going to be hard enough that you would say, oh, I need to do 3 pulls and then a snatch. That's a viable complex as well. If your goal is like, I need to be fucking tired before I do this snatch, for whatever reason, right? It could be more justified. But we know that the pull element is a technical element in nature. So we're doing the pull to reinforce, trajectory and positioning and balance. Then we do the pull or
the snatch immediately after to try and benefit from that and capitalize on it.
Right.
Do you have any other general guidelines you adhere to when constructing complexes?
Yeah, I would generally say that I like what you mentioned about having this like most constraining piece in there, either to fatigue the last thing, right? Like if you're doing presses and then jerks, if you're trying to work on like the technical component of the jerk, you probably have better options.
Yeah.
Or if you're doing like 5 presses and then 3 power jerks because you're building some sort of capacity, like, okay, that makes sense. A good example, I actually programmed 3 muscle cleans plus 3 strict press.
Right.
So it's like, the muscle clean is going to be hard. You're not going to do a ton of weight, and it's probably about a weight you can press for a triple if you're doing a triple in the muscle clean. So you can kind of bridge that and get the training effect from the press, the training effect from the muscle clean. So I think it's just thinking about the pieces and how similar they are in terms of load or weight on the bar, and then also thinking about how it's going to be sequenced. So you kind of mentioned like rules of thumb or heuristics for creating a complex, but then it's what does the next block look like? So maybe something is a no feet pull plus 2 hang snatches plus a classic snatch. The next block it's no feet pull, hang snatch, classic snatch, or it's maybe it's a classic snatch plus a hang snatch. So you're just like moving the pieces around a little bit, but you're getting enough practice with one, the duration or like the length of the movement. So it's four parts, and then you're getting the structure of the workout or the exercise. So you're saying I'm getting used to going classic to hang or hang to classic. So when I want to push the intensity, maybe even do it in the next block and drop a piece off, you have like that practice under your belt. So you're creating that adaptation a bit further along down the line to take advantage of it and put more weight on the bar.
Yeah, and then I'd say one other element to kind of piggyback on that is the sequencing of a complex within a workout.
Right. Yeah.
So you might use complexes, let's say your first few sets are composed of 5 repetitions each, and it might be, a simple one would be like, let's say, clean front squat jerk, and you do, 2 cleans, 2 front squats, and a jerk. And then as you increase in intensity in the session, you might start dropping off the front squats. And then, you might work from, let's say, that starts at 75%, and you work up to 80% or 85% with that complex. Then you start dropping off the front squats, and you start moving up to 90%, and then you're doing like 2 plus 1, clean plus jerk, and that starts to become, it's a way of, one, you can work on in that case, not so much a technical element, and then remove that technical element and try to increase the intensity and start training just the classic movement. A snatch pull plus a snatch is a good example of that. Snatch pull plus snatch early in the day or early in the workout. As the intensity climbs up, you drop the pull and you just, max out your snatch. So that's another consideration for how to actually take a complex and use it within a workout that potentially has another benefit. You can use it as a sort of primer type movement to develop that skill and reinforce it, and then drop it as you move up in intensity.
Well, I think that's what good coaches do. So the weightlifting technique class at Max's gym, they had no feet snatch pulls, snatches, 5 sets of 1 at 70%, and then back squats. And I was like, okay, well, warm up your snatch with a no feet pull plus snatch. When you get to 70%, it's kind of user's choice. You can drop the pull, or you can keep the pull and do the complex. And then you go straight into no feet pulls. So you're getting all this practice on the way up. You're doing the same exercise you're going to do after the snatches. So I think that's where good coaching can be overlooked, is not only the structure of an exercise, of a workout, but like the components of the workout and the components of each exercise and the sequencing of it. At each different kind of like magnification of the exercise, the workout, the training week, the training month, and then the macro cycle.
Yeah, exactly. The main goal is, I think to sort of summarize is, we use complexes as a way to develop capacity, to target and emphasize that volume towards specific technical aspects of the lift we want to improve. And then we do bear complexes because they're fun. And then we think about how we assemble these complexes to capture one of those goals. Right? And we think about how we sequence these complexes within the training cycle, so we end up at a place that we're, accomplishing those things along the way. We also want to think about complexes, finally, from the perspective of being logical in what we're building. Right. Just throwing more stuff in that's very dissimilar and having a smoothie complex, as Josh called it, which is a good name, is, may be useful very early in the cycle because simply for the work capacity, if you've done nothing for a few weeks or months or something, and you just need to get back into shape, but probably has very little. It's very inefficient if used regularly through the training program. Right. And so then we want to think about how we structure the elements in a complex so that we get the most out of it. Right. We're directing movements in the complex to be beneficial towards a singular goal at the end, and then being logical in that choice. Don't piece together things that potentially create a complex that's kind of not really valuable to you.
Okay, so let's take an error, say in the snatch. Someone has an incomplete extension, right? So they, at the top, their knees are soft, their shoulders are behind their hips, and they kind of get this weak explosion. The bar kind of moves out. What kind of complex would you build to work on that?
Yeah, I would say the first couple things are looking at like what's a group of exercises that we know are going to have a positive impact on that, and we already know one of them. but I would say the first things I would look at is like early in the training cycle, we would probably use something like a snatch high pull plus a snatch high pull with flat feet or with no feet, because we want to really emphasize complete extension of the leg and then also emphasize the upper body's inclusion in the pull. Then we would look at maybe something like a power snatch as well, or a no feet power snatch. And then finally, we would probably look at something like a no hook, no feet, or no feet pull plus no feet snatch. Anything we can do to sort of couple those things in the second pull together so we can actually develop it. There's other things we can do too, to not get too big into the spectrum here, but we can think about sequencing it. Like early in the training cycle, because we're generally training the lifts lighter and with more volume, we might do something like a snatch deadlift where you stay inclined over the bar, and we do 2 of those plus a no feet snatch. Right, and then we kind of work towards we're doing something a little bit simpler that's preparing us for the proper movement later. So we'd stay over the bar in the pulls first. Then the next version of that complex would be the high pull, because we've learned to not overextend early on the pull, and then we move into like a power snatch plus a snatch, because we're getting more specific as we go. We're also moving from slower to faster, and we're moving from a range of motion that's slightly shorter because you're staying over to a little bit longer because you actually go to actual power snatch.
That's great.
I know, I made it. So there it is. I think that's a pretty good summation of complexes. Anything you want to add about complexes?
Well, I'd love to add that the specific error that we just chose is actually pulled from the new book that Max and I have written. It's a 120-page book. It's all about the snatch. It has like 15 to 20 errors, different workouts. The book doesn't have errers. The book has, don't find them. Actually, it's on Easter egg hunt.
The book has no errors. What the book does is it takes about 20 or so the most common technical errors that occur in the snatch, and we break it down by exactly what you need to do in order to fix that. So we talk about primer drills, we talk about special exercises, general strength exercises, how to incorporate those into a training session, how to take those and say, okay, I have this problem, here's the solution, how do I build a workout for it and use that workout to actually improve my snatch. It also includes the complete progression that we use to teach people how to snatch. So if you're a new coach or a new athlete, you can learn how to snatch. And then one of my favorite parts of the book, you're going to learn the history of the snatch. Josh wrote the entire history, researched the entire history of the snatch all the way back to 1896 in the Olympics. So you'll learn about the style points you could score in the Olympics in the snatch. But fantastic book. The Weightlifter's Guide to the Snatch. It is on pre-sale right now. It's going to be on pre-sale until maybe the last couple days of January. It's going to be 40% off. So the book is going to be $30 if you buy it in pre-sale. After that, it goes up to $50, I believe, and it's just going to be there. Who knows? Maybe indefinitely. You'll never get that deal again.
So go support us, which is the most important thing, by picking up the book. Support yourself by picking it up. Support your friend by picking them up a copy. And we would greatly appreciate it.
All right. And that's it. The Weightlifting.ai podcast is over, and If you want to get more information from Josh about remote coaching, go check out philosophicalweightlifting.com. If you're interested in following all the bullshit he does day to day, his vlog, his skincare routine, his makeup routine, get ready with Josh, go to Josh_Phil WL. His name is Josh, not Phil, like I thought for about 2 years. If you're interested in remote coaching from me, go check out teamada.com. If you want a consult or anything like that, same place. Also check me out Instagram, max_Ada. And if you aren't already, which I can't believe, on the Weightlifting.ai app, then you are missing out. You can apply all this information we just gave you, buy the book, take those corrective exercises, input them into the app, use that as a way to train, and get your shit together. See you next time.